Deathfire Grasp is the most infamous item Riot ever deleted from League of Legends. It existed for just over 4 years. It had a single active that ripped 15% of an enemy's max health and made every spell after it hit 20% harder, and at its peak, it could end a fight before the enemy's first ability had finished casting. Riot didn't nerf it. Riot didn't tweak it. Riot deleted it from Summoner's Rift entirely and admitted in the dev post that it had been warping the way they were forced to design every burst mage in the game. But Deathfire Grasp is just one item. Across League's 16-year history, Riot has quietly removed dozens of items from the shop. Some, like Deathfire Grasp, were too oppressive to balance. Some warped lanes so badly they made every other strategy obsolete. And a few, a strange, specific few, were named after threats in Runeterra's actual lore. The Watchers beneath the Howling Abyss, the Black Spear plunged through Callista's chest, items that vanished from the game but whose curses, in the canon, are still active to this day. So we're going to walk through 9 of them. 9 items the community treated as cursed, either because the meta folklore decided they were, or because the lore literally says they are. Some you remember, some you've never heard of. And by the end, I want to argue something specific. Riot can delete an item from the shop in a single patch. They cannot delete the curse it carried. Items die, curses don't. We're going to start with the one that's barely cursed at all, and ramp up from there. Wooglit's Witch Cap. Wooglit's Witch Cap was the only Zhonya's Hourglass that ever had a stat budget bigger than Zhonya's itself. 100 ability power, 45 armor, the Rabadon's 25% AP multiplier baked in, and a 90-second cooldown stasis active identical to Zhonya's. Combined with a Rabadon's, it gave roughly 450 AP from 2 items. But you've probably never built it, because Wooglit's was map exclusive. It only existed on Twisted Treeline, the old 3v3 map, and the Crystal Scar, where Dominion was played. Never on Summoner's Rift. Riot added it in November 2012 as part of an overhaul that removed Rabadon's Death Cap and Zhonya's Hourglass from those maps and folded them both into Wooglit's. The name comes from a real player who hit a referral milestone in Riot's old Refer a Friend system, the same system that named Wrecker, which we'll get to next. Then the map started dying. Dominion was killed in patch 6.18 in early 2016. Wooglit's held on for 3 more years, alive only on Twisted Treeline. And then, on November 19th, 2019, patch 9.23 retired Twisted Treeline entirely. Wooglit's went with it. Mechanically, the item was strong, a tank mage hybrid with stasis baked in, but it never warped a meta because almost nobody who played the maps it lived on cared about the meta. It was a strong item in dead rooms. Here's the interesting part. If you've ever seen the splash art for Ryze Whitebeard, the elder version of Ryze, the hat he's wearing in that art is Wooglit's Witch Cap. Some items aren't cursed, they just outlive the worlds they were made for. And Wooglit's wasn't the only item that vanished in that 9.23 patch. The next one had been haunting the shop for 6 full years before Riot finally let it go. Wrecker. Wrecker is the most haunted item in League of Legends history, not because it was broken, but because for 6 years almost nobody ever bought it. Riot added it in November 2013. It was built from Catalyst the Protector and Chain Vest at 2,650 gold, and its unique active prevented enemy turrets from attacking for up to 3 seconds, on a 2-minute cooldown. The name comes from a real player, Wrecker the Masked Gamer, who hit over 1,000 referrals in Riot's old Refer a Friend program. It's a pun on Wrecker, with Ohm being a unit of electrical resistance. The internal Riot code name for the active was Faith Shaker. And that name might be the most interesting thing about it, because once Wrecker entered the shop, it almost never left it. Riot reworked the item roughly once a season for 6 straight years. They added Point Runner, bonus movement speed near towers, to try to force it into builds. In one patch note, Riot themselves wrote 4th time's the charm, admitting they'd never found the right statistical combination to make it work. I'm going with the wiki's count of 4 headline reworks, but some of you are going to put it closer to 6 or 7. Take that one. It was finally removed in patch 9.23, the same preseason 10 patch that killed Kleptomancy, Spear of Shojin, and Twisted Treeline itself. In the dev post, Riot finally admitted what they'd been dancing around for 6 years. Turret disabling was an interesting mechanic, but not one they wanted potentially in every team's toolkit, so they killed it. Esports Edition, in a piece written before the removal, called Wrecker the worst item in League of Legends. It didn't help in the 1v1, it didn't help in wave clear, it was useless unless you were already ahead. so it sat in the shop, every game, every patch, for 6 full years, a ghost item nobody clicked on. But here's where it gets really interesting. After Ohmwrecker was deleted, Riot quietly renamed the turret's penetrating bullets passive to Ohmwrecker as a tongue-in-cheek tribute. And the turret disabling mechanic itself was inherited by Volibear's R Stormbringer when the 1000-pierced bear was reworked in 2020. Every time Volibear ults a tower, that's the Ohmwrecker active still ghosting through the game. Ohmwrecker died from neglect. The next 3 items died because they were too good, all in the same patch, on the same December day in 2012. Heart of Gold. Heart of Gold is the item that birthed an entire era of professional League of Legends, and then was deleted in the patch that ended that era forever. It was one of League's oldest items, added in beta before the game officially launched. 200 health, 27 armor, and the unique passive that generated 5 gold every 10 seconds. Cost 825 gold. Paid for itself in 27.5 minutes of holding, or about 13 minutes if you sold it before the late game. Throughout Season 1 and Season 2, Heart of Gold defined what the community called the GP10 meta, the era where supports and junglers stacked Heart of Gold, Philosopher's Stone, and Kaga's Lucky Pick because dedicated wards cost 75 gold each, and supports had no other way to afford them. Then bruisers and junglers caught on. Buying Heart of Gold on a tank top laner gave free gold, free HP, free armor, and built into Randuin's Omen, a legendary tank utility item, at 0 efficiency cost. Riot removed it on December 4th, 2012 in the Preseason 3 patch. Their stated reason, preserved on the wiki, it allowed non-support characters access to free extra gold. In Riot's own words, you could incur advantage by not doing anything. Heart of Gold didn't just shape a meta, it shaped pro play. The entire S1 and S2 World Championship eras were structured around teams whose supports and junglers stacked GP10 items because the alternative was being unable to ward. RI Pog was one of the longest-running running jokes of early Season 3. NA forums were flooded with petitions to bring it back. The role Heart of Gold used to play, making supports functional on no farm, was inherited by Sightstone, added in the exact same patch. Sightstone solved the warding problem more directly, but Heart of Gold's GP10 passive didn't die. It mutated. Frostfang, Targon's Brace, Spellthief's Edge, every gold generation support item in the modern game is a great-grandchild of Heart of Gold. The item is gone. Its DNA is in every support build in League right now. Heart of Gold wasn't the only item that died on December 4th, 2012. 2 other items got the axe in the same patch, and the next one, players had been begging Riot to nerf for 2 solid years. Leviathan. Leviathan was a snowball item for tanks. The more enemies you killed, the harder you were to kill, and at maximum stacks it gave the wielder a flat 15% damage reduction from every source in the game. Riot added it in December 2010, in the same patch that birthed Deathfire Grasp, Sword of the Occult, and Sword of the Divine. Leviathan started at 180 health, gained 32 HP per stack up to 20, and lost a third of those stacks on death. At full stacks, it gave 820 bonus HP plus that 15% damage reduction from a single 1,275 gold item. The community identified the abusers immediately. Cho'Gath, who already stacked HP through Feast. Old Scion, pre-rework Scion, who stacked HP through Cryptic Gaze on minion kills. Singed. Garen. Shen. The damage reduction also had a long-lived bug where it incorrectly reduced true damage. Riot only fixed it late in the item's life cycle. Riot removed it on December 4th, 2012. The same patch as Heart of Gold, and as we'll get to in a moment, Madred's Bloodrazor. The reason was philosophical. Leviathan was the first of the 3 snowball sister items. Magi's Soulstealer for AP, Sword of the Occult for AD, Leviathan for tanks, to die. Riot didn't want a tank's effective HP to scale exponentially off kills, because it warped how the entire enemy team had to play. Cho'Gath at 6 Feast stacks plus a fully stacked Leviathan was a different game entirely. Here's the interesting detail. When Riot designed the new Ornn Masterwork item Heartsteel in pre-season 2023, an HP stacking Colossus item for fighters, its placeholder name during development was Leviathan. A direct, deliberate callback to the original. Riot didn't kill Leviathan because it was too strong. They killed it because it was too good a teacher of bad habits. Leviathan was the tank snowball. The next item was the AD snowball, and Riot openly admitted they didn't delete it because it was broken. They deleted it because it was incompatible with the game they wanted to design: Sword of the Occult and Sword of the Divine. Two items released in the same patch, in the same December of 2010, and they died for two completely different reasons. Sword of the Occult was the AD member of the Snowball sister trio. It started at 5 stacks, gained 5 attack damage per stack and 2 per kill, up to 20 stacks for 100 bonus AD plus 20% attack speed at max. Lost half its stacks on death. At full stacks, it gave more raw attack damage than any other item in the game except a fully stacked Manamune. Sword of the Divine was different. Attack speed, 30 armor penetration, and an active that made the wielder's basic attacks impossible to dodge for several seconds. Useful only because dodge was a champion stat in Old League, granted by Phantom Dancer, Ninja Tabi, Jax's E, Nidalee in Cougar form. There was a version of League where 20% of all auto attacks just missed, and Sword of the Divine was the item that turned that off. Sword of the Divine died first. Riot removed the dodge stat itself in mid-2011, and Sword of the Divine's core function was deleted underneath it. They brought it back in Preseason 3 as a pure attack speed item, then removed it again in October 2014. Forum threads of the era openly tied the second removal to Jax. Every Jax player was buying it because the guaranteed stun combo with his E was uncounterable. Sword of the Occult survived almost 5 years. Riot originally planned to rework it. Leaked PBE stats were caught by a Reddit user before Riot scrapped the rework and deleted the item instead in the Preseason 6 patch. Riot's own farewell post said it directly. Deliberately keeping an item undertuned so that it can remain fun but unbalanced was something they could no longer uphold while still preserving a competitive game. Sword of the Occult wasn't broken. Riot deleted it because it was incompatible with the game they wanted to design. Now, I'm calling these two siblings, but technically, they were never linked in Riot's design notes. Some of you are going to correct me on this, and you're right. They were just released in the same patch. The community paired them. Riot didn't. Both items live on. Sword of the Divine exists permanently in arena and teamfight tactics. Sword of the Occult exists only in retrospectives, but its DNA shaped how Riot designs every snowball mechanic that came after. One item was killed by the world changing around it. The other was killed because Riot's idea of what League should be had changed instead. That covers 2 of the items deleted on December 4th, 2012. The third was the cursed jungle item that defined an entire role for 2 full seasons. Madred's Bloodrazor. Madred's Bloodrazor is the cursed jungle item that defined an entire era, and then vanished from the game so completely that most modern players have never even seen its icon. It was one of League's oldest items, added in closed beta before the game officially launched. 40 attack damage, 40% attack speed, 25 armor, and the unique on-hit passive that made it legendary. Basic attacks dealt magic damage equal to 4% of the target's maximum health. For Seasons 1 and 2, Madred's Bloodrazor was the answer to tanks. If your team had no magic damage, and the enemy team had a Cho'Gath stacking Warmogs, you bought Madred's. Master Yi, Warwick, Twitch, Kayle, Renekton all built it as a core item. It defined Master Yi jungle for 2 full seasons. Riot removed it on December 4th, 2012. Same patch as Heart of Gold and Leviathan. Their stated reason, preserved on the wiki, the item dealt magic damage from auto attack on hit, which made it awkward to fit into builds with auto-attacking champions who typically wanted physical damage items. Riot replaced it with Blade of the Ruined King. Same percent HP shred, switched to physical. When the announcement dropped, NA forums opened a literal petition, "Don't remove Madred's Bloodrazor" thread. And here's where the thesis of this video lands hardest. Madred's Bloodrazor is the cleanest items die, curses don't example in the game. The name is gone, the icon is gone, but the mechanic, auto-attack characters shredding tanks via percent max HP on hit, became permanent League design vocabulary. Every Kraken Slayer, every Botrick, every Liandry's, every modern item with a percent HP component is a child of Madred's. In May 2016, Riot added a jungle enchantment literally named Bloodrazor, with the same percent HP passive. Even Riot couldn't pretend Madred's was gone. You can delete an item from the shop. You can't delete the idea it gave the people who designed the next item. Quick aside, the full story of how the jungle role was rebuilt, from Madred's razors to the modern jungle item system, is a topic for another video. If you'd like me to cover that, let me know in the comments. That's 3 items, 3 philosophies, 1 patch. But none of those 3 were the most cursed item Riot ever deleted. The most cursed item, the one Riot openly admitted had been bending their entire design philosophy around it for years, is the one we opened with. Deathfire Grasp. Deathfire Grasp is the most infamous deleted item in League of Legends history, and the one Riot has been most explicit about why they killed it. It was added in the same December 2010 patch as Leviathan, Sword of the Occult, and Sword of the Divine. At its peak, 60 ability power, 10% cooldown reduction, 12 mana regeneration, and the active that dealt 15% of the target's maximum health as magic damage while applying Doom. A debuff amplifying all magic damage taken by 20% for 4 seconds on a 60-second cooldown. For 4 years, Deathfire Grasp was the canonical burst mage finisher. LeBlanc's RQW DFG one-shot defined her gameplay. Veigar built it every game. Ahri's charm DFG ult execution was a meme. Lissandra, Syndra, Katarina, Mordekaiser, every burst mage built around DFG's existence. Riot removed it from Summoner's Rift in patch 5.2 in January 2015. I'm going with 5.2 as the deletion patch. Some of you are going to correct me and say it was 5.3, or that the final removal happened over multiple patches. The wiki and the Riot Jag dev post both say 5.2. I'm going with that. And the dev post itself is one of the most quoted statements in League's history. Riot's live balance designer wrote that DFG made burst patterns even more bursty. The item effectively added another nuke spell on top of kits already designed to have strong upfront damage, and aggravated the "whoa, I got one shot out of nowhere" frustration of playing against certain champions. The deeper internal complaint was that Deathfire Grasp had drifted from its original purpose. Riot had built it to be a tank-busting item. Liandry's Torment had taken over that role, and DFG had quietly become the item that stacked another nuke spell on top of already burst-heavy assassins. Riot deleted it because it had stopped doing the job it was made for, and started doing a job they didn't want any item to do. This is what makes Deathfire Grasp the cursed item. Riot named it as the one that warped Ahri, LeBlanc, Veigar, Lissandra, and Syndra so badly, the burst mage class had to be balanced around it. It was the closest thing to a champion class-defining item the game has ever had. Here's the interesting detail. Deathfire Grasp's spiritual successor was Luden's Echo, added in the same patch cycle to fill the burst mage slot without the % HP active. The name itself lives on in Pentakill's first album, where it's the title of track 2. And Riot has resurrected the actual item in Nexus Blitz every time the mode has returned. Deathfire Grasp wasn't deleted because it was strong. It was deleted because Riot couldn't design new champions around it without making them broken too. That's 7 items. Every one of them cursed only in the sense that the community made them cursed, in the sense that they warped the game. The last 2 items on this list are different. The last 2 are cursed in the actual canon. Eye of the Watchers. Eye of the Watchers is the only support item in League's history named after one of the game's apocalyptic threats. The Eye Stones, Eye of the Watchers, Eye of the Ascended, Eye of the Equinox, were added in May 2016, in the mid-season Mage update. Eye of the Watchers itself was a fusion of Sightstone and the Frostfang line, ability power, health, the tribute proc, and built-in stealth wards. It was deleted for good in November 2020 in the preseason 11 item overhaul that wiped the entire Eye Stone class. But this section isn't really about the item, it's about what the item was named after. The 3 Eye Stones were explicitly themed after locations of physical transcendence in Runeterra: Mount Targon for the Aspect, Shurima's Sun Disk for the Ascended, and the Howling Abyss, the Prison of the Watchers. The Watchers, also called the Frozen Watchers or the Pierce Eyes, are void entities. In the canonical short story Legend of the Frozen Watchers by Anthony Reynolds, they transformed Freljordians into the Iceborn, were betrayed when the sisters Avarosa and Cyrilda rebelled against them, and were entombed in true ice beneath the howling abyss by Lissandra, who sacrificed her own sisters to seal the rift. Their prison is held by 9 runic seals. The seals are slowly fading, and Lissandra has spent the centuries since rewriting Freljord's history to cover up her pact with the very entities she imprisoned. If this name sounds familiar, it's because the Howling Abyss is the ARAM map. Every viewer who has ever played ARAM has played on top of the Watcher's prison. Quick aside, the full story of the Watchers, the Seals, and Lissandra's pact deserves its own video. If that's something you'd like me to cover, let me know. The eye motif ties to Lysandra herself. Blinded by Volibear in canon, she walks in dreams. It ties to Belveth, the Voidborn who defies the Watchers, and was released into the lore in 2022. Riot deleted the item in 2020. The threat the item was named after is still imprisoned. The seals are still failing. Belveth's release, the Lysandra universe stories, the entire Void arc, all of it continues to point at the cosmology Eye of the Watchers was named after. The Watcher's name was chosen deliberately by Riot in 2016, knowing the Freljord lore would eventually expand. It was a piece of long-form lore foreshadowing, embedded in a support item. Riot can delete an item. They cannot delete the cosmology it pointed to. Eye of the Watchers was named after a curse in the lore. The last item on this list isn't named after a curse. It is one, the Black Spear. The Black Spear is the only item in this video that was never deleted, never reworked, and never patched out, because the lore says it cannot be removed. It exists in the game right now. Every Kalista game on every patch, the Black Spear is automatically placed in slot 6 the moment the match begins. No gold value, no build path, no upgrade. Used to bind an Oathsworn ally for the rest of the match, but the Black Spear isn't just an item, it's a lore artifact. And in the canon, it is plunged through Kalista's chest at all times. Here's the story. In a forgotten age, before Noxus was a name anyone knew, Kalista was the niece and most trusted general of King Viego of Camavor. When an assassin's poisoned blade meant for Viego instead struck his queen, Isolde, Kalista was sent to find a cure. She found the Blessed Isles, and the elders who refused her, declaring that Isolde was already gone, and that they would not subvert death. Viego, mad with grief, ordered Kalista to butcher the elders. She refused, and her supposed comrade in arms, Hecarim of the Iron Order, drove his spear through her back. The entire Iron Order joined in. Kalista, her lover Ledros, and every Camavoran loyal to her were killed. With her last breath, she swore vengeance. What happened next made the Shadow Isles. Viego's failed necromantic ritual to revive Isolde corrupted the Blessed Isles' protective barrier, turning the archipelago into the Shadow Isles and birthing the Black Mist. Kalista, like Hecarim and Thresh and Yorick, returned as a wraith. But she returned a hive mind of betrayed souls, referring to herself only as we, with the spear that killed her permanently jutting from her chest. That's the Black Spear, the literal weapon of betrayal, weaponized into a contract. Every ally Kalista binds with it becomes an oath sworn, a soul she will eventually consume. With each soul absorbed, the canon says, her humanity disappears a little more. The Riot short story, The Echoes Left Behind, by Anthony Reynolds, shows that Kalista has killed Hecarim in wraith form again and again over centuries, and he keeps returning, because the Black Mist will not let any of them rest. If you want the full story, Anthony Reynolds wrote a novel called Ruination, the first canonical novel in the League universe, which tells the entire Kalista, Viego, Hecarim, Ledros story. Items die, curses don't. The Black Spear is what happens when Riot designs a curse so complete that they couldn't delete it from the game even if they tried. So those are 9 items. 9 items the community treated as cursed, either because they warped the meta so badly Riot deleted them, or because the canon literally says they are. There are more I left out. Atma's Impaler, Force of Nature, Banner of Command, the older versions of Magi's. I'm not pretending this is exhaustive. I picked 9 because 9 of them tell the story I wanted to tell. And the story is this. Riot can delete an item from the shop in a single patch. It happens every preseason. They've done it dozens of times. But the thing that made the item cursed, the design philosophy that warped around Deathfire Grasp, the gold economy era that revolved around Heart of Gold, the on-hit shred mechanic Madred's Bloodrazor pioneered, the Watchers still pressing against Lysandra's seals beneath the howling abyss, the Black Spear permanently lodged in Kalista's chest. Those don't go away when the item icon disappears from the shop. Items die, curses don't. The shop changes every patch, the lore doesn't. If you'd like me to do a full video on every removed champion ability that was too cursed for the game, old Akali Shroud, old Eve Stealth, the old Karthus passive that revealed the entire map on death, let me know in the comments. There's an entire history of deleted mechanics that paralleled the deleted items, and I think it deserves its own video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.